Okay, so how do they compare? How does the SPUI alternative on this project compare to the PFI? Well, there you go. The SPUI has not one benefit over the PFI. This is a table of important selection factors. All of the factors that I've listed here above this heavy gray line, they had included, FDOT included in their feasibility study, and can be found in an evaluation matrix that they showed to the public at their one public meeting. They're supposed to have 20 public meetings and they had one. All of the selection factors I've listed below this gray line, I've added and believe that they should have been included. But you can see that none of them does the SPUI provide the better option. All of them are the PFI is the better alternative. So the first and foremost selection factor is level service, because that's the purpose of the damn project. The whole purpose of this project is to meet future traffic demand. That's the purpose and need of the project in their environmental document, to meet future traffic. And the SPUI is going to be level service F, a severe F. The bridge is great. There's no delay on the bridge at all. US 41 is a parking lot. You'd never know that from FDOT's presentations, from how they talk about the alternatives. You would never know that there's congestion on US 41 with the SPUI. They just ignore it. They just omit it from everything. And the MPO board, same thing. They just ignore the fact that 41 is going to be severely congested. They don't care. As far as they're concerned, the people who use 41, they're peasants. The people who use 54, those are people who matter because they're going to be spending money in Newport Richey. Tourists, people that come to the area to play golf, snowbirds, that crowd. The country club set in Pasco County, they'll be using 54, they'll be using the bridge. We don't want them to be delayed. But everybody that's working, that commutes to Tampa twice a day, they could be stuck there as much as 20 minutes waiting to get through the signal at the SPUI. Twice a day. They don't care. They don't care. Whereas at the PFI, it's 1 minute. 1 minute of delay versus 20 minutes of delay. The next factor here is impact on community. Well, the SPUI is going to be 1.25 miles of retaining wall and bridge versus the PFI, which is no bridge, no retaining walls. I mean, this is not this area where this intersection is located, Land O'Lakes. This is not urban jungle with concrete everywhere. It's not a concrete jungle. It's open. There's no big structures. Tallest building is 2 stories, I think, maybe 3. It's more suburban, almost pastoral, and they're going to build this monstrosity, which is going to have a big visual impact on the area. It's going to impact the community. FDOT's mission is to minimize impacts on the community, except when it's convenient for them not to. User benefit. So their analysis in their evaluation matrix, they show the PFI provides a $48 million per year added user benefit over the SPUI. So user benefit is measured in terms of delay, and fuel consumption. So how much time people spend stuck at the signal, okay, the user benefit is minimizing that. So they have it, the PFI providing an added annual user benefit of $48 million a year over the SPUI. If they had analyzed the SPUI competently, correctly, properly, which they didn't do, over my repeated objections, and if they had designed the PFI correctly and signalized it correctly, which they didn't do, over my repeated objections, that difference would be double that. The PFI benefit to people using the intersection, driving through it, would be more like $100 million a year. I believe it would be double theirs. Which over a 20-year period, which is the service life of the PFI, that's $2 billion user benefit. The PFI versus the SPUI. The SPUI structure is going to be there 50 years. That's the FDOT's functional life of a bridge is 50 years. Well, that's $5 billion user benefit in current dollars. Next is noise. The SPUI is noisier than the PFI. That's their analysis. Project cost. They have estimated the SPUI at $222 million in project cost. Project cost is engineering, right-of-way, utility relocations, and construction engineering. That's project cost. They have estimated the SPUI at $222 million. The PFI they estimated at $108 million. My fee would be $57 million, which is 50% the difference. So the difference between the SPUI project cost and the PFI project cost, not including my fee, $114 million. So the SPUI is $114 million more to build than the PFI, and I was seeking by this time 50% of that difference. So I get $57 million. That's what they've cost me by selecting the SPUI. They cost me and my family $57 million. They've cost the taxpayers $57 million plus life cycle cost. They've cost the public $100 million a year in delay and fuel consumption. They don't care. Right away required. The PFI. Less than half what is needed for the SPUI. Less than half the number of parcels than the SPUI. Relocations. Again, PFI is better. Less than, well, almost half of the business relocations of that of the SPUI. And there should be no residential relocations with the PFI. 3 with the SPUI. Least impact on access. SPUI is going to have a high impact on access. Not that you'd ever know from their presentation. And the PFI, properly designed, properly signalized, should have a low impact on access. That's property access and access to local roads. The reason that the SPUI is high is congestion, which they ignore. Somehow in their minds, the 41 gets no congestion. There's nothing there. There's no congestion, except that if you design it, if you model it correctly with VSIM, analyze it correctly in VSIM, you get miles of congestion. You get 3 miles of vehicle queues at the SPUI signal. And that impacts access. Because even if there's a driveway that is directly off the road that you can access by just turning into it, if there's a 3-mile queue of cars, well, that has an impact on access. But they just don't acknowledge that. And why would they? They don't drive there. These FDOT bureaucrats, they don't drive through that intersection. So why should they care? Impact on floodplains, PFI, much less. Impact on wetlands, PFI, much less. So in all of their selection criteria, from their evaluation matrix, the PFI scores best by a lot. And then I added these, which they excluded or omitted or just didn't include from their study. Pedestrian safety. You'd think that would be an important factor. It's normally considered. I did in my past projects. Pedestrian safety. There's no question the PFI is safer for pedestrians, because for the SPUI signal on 41, pedestrians have to cross 9 lanes in a single crossing. 9 lanes with 5 vehicle pedestrian conflict points. That's 5 different directions in that one crossing a pedestrian can be struck by a vehicle. Right? You got the through movements both ways. You've got a left turn, and then you've got another left turn, and then you got a U-turn. It's 5. 5 different directions of a pedestrian can be struck as they cross 9 lanes. But somehow that's safer than the PFI in their minds. That's safer than the PFI, which has a maximum of 4 lanes if they add the auxiliary through lane, which they needed to add and didn't. 4 lanes to cross, and traffic's coming from only one direction. There's no question the PFI is safer for pedestrians. It's absolutely indisputable. Again, you'd never know it from the way FDOT and the MPO board talk about the PFI. Their innuendos, their suggestions. Oh, you got traffic coming from all these different directions when you have to cross the road at the PFI. No, you don't. No, you don't. Each crossing, traffic's coming from one direction. Anyway, air quality, well, PFI is better. Oh wait, vehicle safety. Yeah, vehicle safety, but they don't consider that either. Well, it is challenging to estimate relative vehicle safety. You don't have both projects built and in the ground, and you can study them for several years to see which one's safer. Don't have the luxury of doing that. But there are tools available that can help estimate their relative safety performance, which they did not make any use of. One is called the Federal Highways, I think it's a surrogate safety analysis model or assessment model. Surrogate safety assessment model. It's a plug-in to VSEM. So it runs inside VSEM, and what it does is it quantifies vehicle interactions. They're the speed and rate and intensity of vehicle interactions, and from that you can deduce which design would be more prone to crashes. So obviously the higher the relative speed of interactions between vehicles that are close to each other having to stop or go around a vehicle, that's going to increase the likelihood of crashes between the designs. They could have used that. I've used it before. It's real easy to use, but no, they wouldn't do that. That's work. We don't want to make the bureaucrats work, right? Don't make the bureaucrats work. So they didn't use that tool, and I think if they had, it would have shown the PFI is safer because it doesn't get congested, so it's not going to have those high-speed vehicle interactions like you have at a congested intersection where traffic is stopped and you have traffic approaching stop traffic at a high speed, right? That's where you get rear ends and side swipes. They also have the Highway Safety Manual to use. And the Highway Safety Manual, which is a federal guide, allows for assessing roadway safety based on geometric properties. So you look at the geometric features of the intersection, and it gives a estimation of what kind of safety conditions that feature will create. So they could have applied the Highway Safety Manual to designs to evaluate the relative safety. That was not done. What I note here is that the PFI has 4 fewer vehicle-vehicle conflict points than the SPUI does at the signal, because the SPUI signal is going to function like a standard signal, and standard signal has 32 vehicle-vehicle conflict points. The PFI has 28. Air quality, PFI is better because it doesn't get congested. Least visual impact, of course, the PFI, it's all at grade. The bridges, and there's 2 sets of bridges for the SPUI, because there's one set of bridges goes over the intersection, the SPUI intersection goes over 41, and the railroad track. So it has to span across a SPUI intersection, which is a big intersection, and the railroad track. It has to be 23 feet of vertical clearance over the railroad track, minimum, and there can't be any support structures within the SPUI intersection. That's a long span, and it's going to be a very deep structure. I'm guessing maybe 10-foot deep beams. Then you have the parapet on top. It's 23 feet, so it's like 35 feet in the air. So it's taller than a 3-story building in an area that is, like I said, you're looking at buildings that are 2-story buildings, tops. Most of the buildings in the area are 1-story. So it's going to just really stand out. So it's going to have a big visual impact. It's also going to become obscuring for local businesses, where people aren't going to be able to see signs, etc., or storefronts. FDOT doesn't care. Let's see. Transit friendly, PFI, because it doesn't get congested. I think the SPUI is probably better from the standpoint of providing, say, more direct access to and from a park and ride, if there's one, which the MPO board, they have their eyes on the northwest corner of the intersection with the SPUI alternative, because they're going to relocate a lumber yard. Hey, great place to put a park and ride. Right? That's them playing, God with people's lives. We'll just put a park and ride there. Well, okay. It's true that SPUI would probably give better access to such a facility, except US 41 is going to be a parking lot, and your buses are going to be stuck in queue along with everyone else. That's why I say that the PFI is more friendly for transit. Least disruptive during construction. That matters to local businesses. How long is the construction going to be? Well, the PFI is going to be less than half as much time to build than the SPUI. Shortest construction, let's see, disruption. So the PFI is less disruptive, and it's shorter construction duration. So by disruptive, the SPUI involves building foundations, doing a lot of earthwork to fill behind retaining walls, placing these enormous steel beams, pile driving. There's a lot of shifting traffic around, very disruptive, and it's going to take twice as long to build. Work zone safety, well, the PFI is safer It's all at grade, and a lot of the work at the PFI is on the outsides. Whereas for the SPUI, it's all the work is on the inside, because they're going to be putting it down the existing pavement, basically, is where they're going to be building the bridge and putting in retaining walls. Life cycle costs. Well, the PFI is cheaper to maintain and inspect. So life cycle costs is the ongoing cost to maintain and inspect the project, make repairs. Well, the SPUI has to be regularly inspected, probably every 2 years, and the retaining walls, and then they have to be maintained, have to be repaired, and those are going to be expensive. The PFI needs to be resurfaced every 10 years or so. So it's millions more in life cycle costs. They didn't include that cost. Better overall emergency response. I say the PFI is better because it doesn't get congested on 41. I mean, you could argue that if you're you know, an ambulance or fire truck going over the bridge, yeah, okay, it's not delayed. Whereas at the PFI, well, it shouldn't be delayed very much either, since they can drive through the signal and the signals can be preempted. But it's not going to be congested on 41. So emergency vehicles can get through easier and not have to contend with stopped traffic. And hurricane evacuation, I don't really know for sure if the PFI would be better than the SPUI. It would depend on how they do the evacuation. I give it to the PFI because it's not congested. It shouldn't be congested under hurricane evacuation either. That could have been modeled. That could have been evaluated. They didn't do it. They didn't look at that at all. Not a consideration. So I've got the pictures here of these three individuals all laughing at me, laughing at the PFI. They think it's a hoot. This is as they are committing fraud. I say here that the PFI is an order of magnitude better than the SPUI, but who benefits? You know, with the SPUI, not the public, not the taxpayer. So who? Well, they do. They benefit. I think that the MPO board members are they've got their hands in the cookie jar. They're all they're doing the bidding of developers, land developers, and real estate investors. One of the board members, the chairman of the board, I think it's chairman. He is a real estate agent. So they're in it to enrich themselves. I'll talk more about them individually later. Gwen, as a bureaucrat in charge of FDOT District 7, the secretary of District 7, for him, he benefits by just, eliminating the headache of having to deal with a new design like the PFI. So it's fraud for convenience sake. So I say in the process of picking the SPUI, they've committed official and professional unlawful misconduct. In a word, these officials are corrupt. Also, in the table, I've highlighted congestion versus no congestion to illustrate just how big of an impact congestion has on other things. It's a knock-on impact that severe congestion is going to have on other selection factors. So I have it listed here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 factors that I say are influenced by the fact that the SPUI is congested and the PFI is not. Never know that from their materials. They don't talk about congestion at all. They just pretend like it doesn't even exist. That's called lying by omission. This table shows a progression of alternatives from the very beginning of the PD&E to today. And this has occurred over let's see, 11 years. So the PD&E began in 2012, and I mean it's still ongoing, but they made their final selection. It became official in February of 2023. That's 11 years. Okay, and I've divided it into 3 chapters. There's from the start in 2012 to December 2015, when FDOT held their public meeting for the original PD&E. They showed these 2 bridges, and this Alt 3A is what is today Alt 1 SPUI. So they've maintained the SPUI all along, because I believe that's the design they picked day one. They were not open to anything else. They're going to build the SPUI come hell or high water. That's what they're going to build, no matter what. So the PFI was never going to get any kind of honest, open-minded consideration. Never. Nor was the CFI. They already picked the project day one. This is what we're building, and I believe as part of this facilitating the conversion of 54 to a freeway. That's what, and everything that followed with respect to this PD&E and the MPO's Vision 54-56 study has been theater. Nothing but theater, so that they can check off the boxes on the NEPA requirements. Yes, they had alternatives. So they're supposed to evaluate alternatives. They can say, well, we had alternatives. We weren't ever going to actually consider them seriously. We were only going to do this one, but we can check that box off. Okay, so this is SPUI that we have today, this Alt 3A, and then they had another SPUI variant, which was a throwaway alternative. They called Alt 3C, which is basically 3A, but all elevated on 54. So it's like a viaduct, which is not so different than what they've got now, except that it's not cantilever. So their Alt 3C actually cantilevered over the road on the ground. But in the alternative that we find, the final build alternative has it all filled in, and the ramps, which are frontage roads, are on the outsides. So I got involved with this. I became aware of this project in July of 2014. I first proposed the PFI then. It was ignored. Then they had their public meeting, and it was in February of 2016 that I submitted my proposal for the PFI for value, what it's called, value engineering proposal. That's what I call it. Then Vision 54-56 happened. That was Chapter 2, where there were 11 alternatives. This was a fiasco, a complete circus. Out of it came 3 alternatives. The SPUI, which is this alternative 4, which is just relabeling of alternative 3, because this was the Vision 54-56 study was looking at the entire length of 54, 30 miles. So they were thinking, okay, we'll build this SPUI basically at each of the major intersections. That's what they want to do. That's what they're really after doing now. And then the PFI, which, as I said earlier, was voted number 1 by the task force. And then this alternative 10 became the CFI with bridges. And then the last chapter was the feasibility study FDOT performed. So the Vision 54-56 study was 2 years, and then the PD&E feasibility study, that's been 4 years. It's supposed to take 1 year, taken 4 years. And then you had the PD&E final chapter, is where they finalized their NEPA documentation with the SPUI as the as their final build alternative. I say here that the PD&E was essentially done by December 2015. So it had been ongoing by that point in time for 3 years or 4 years, 4 years, and they had their two alternatives, and really it was just 3A was going to be the final project. So it was basically done in December 2015. Then they introduced this Vision 54-56 study and put the PD&E on pause so the county and the MPO could do this planning level study. I consider it to be part of the PD&E because the alternatives, they're integrated. They became integrated studies when they paused the PD&E and then said that we're going to complete the PD&E given what alternatives come out of this Vision 54-56 Phase 2 thing. So I had to endure 2 years of stress as the MPO evaluated, quote unquote. They didn't even evaluate it. They just included the PFI in this Vision 54-56 study Phase 2 task. It has a task force, and the task force is made up of just regular citizens, regular people. There was one traffic engineer on the task force who didn't amount to anything, and everybody else is just say a lay person. And it's this task force that would decide what alternatives would then be studied by FDOT to complete the PD&E. And I was in this situation where I was seeing the PFI potentially being eliminated at this point in time. The Vision 54-56 study is planning level, and the PD&E is preliminary level. I consider that a violation of NEPA because the alternatives are to be evaluated at the same level of detail. Alternatives that are selected for evaluation. Well, they were using basically this MPO study to screen the alternatives for the intersection. And it wasn't being done by FDOT. It was being done by a planning organization. And the consultant doing it are planners. They're not highway or traffic engineers. I guess they did have a traffic engineer on staff, but they're not qualified to do preliminary level engineering. And I had to sit there and endure this because they did everything wrong. And it was all done with the idea that they were going to manipulate the task force into picking the SPUI, which is what they want. The MPO board wants a SPUI, FDOT wants a SPUI. But the public doesn't want a bridge. There's a lot of public opposition. Business owners, just regular people in the area don't want to build this big honking bridge here. They want something that works, that is accurate. And that's why this whole thing happened, is public opposition to the bridge. Well, then the MPO will look at other options without a bridge. But they did it in an incompetent, in a wholly inappropriate way. And I was looking at the PFI getting eliminated at this point. So I say this extra evaluative process, which is what it was, completely unjustified and inappropriate given the planning level of detail and lack of competent engineering. But the consequence of this pause, which ended up with the same alternatives I told FDOT, I told District 7 that they were going to have anyway. So when I first proposed the PFI, or when I submitted my PFI concept proposal to FDOT, it was at that time I said, there's only two kinds of intersections that can work at this location. You've got your bridge identified. The only two intersections that have any possibility of working here is the PFI and CFI. And I told them when they started this Vision 5456 fiasco, they're going to end up with the SPUI, the PFI, and the CFI. And that's what happened. But it cost 10 years of delay. The opening year went from 2020 to 2030. That meant 6 years after my patent expires that it would be opening to traffic, putting my patent fee in jeopardy. No one gave a damn. None of them cared at all. Not at all. 10-year delay. So this slide contains some exhibits from my PFI concept proposal for value engineering that I submitted to FDOT District 7 February 26, 2016. This is a title sheet. These panels over here are slides from the presentation that I gave, an hour-long presentation at FDOT in Tampa. Present was Kirk Bogan. He is a District 7 environmental management engineer and was serving at that time as the project manager. They've had several project managers on their study, and this was, I think, between project managers. So I gave an hour-long presentation, and at this presentation there were several other people present. I made a mistake. I didn't ask for introductions, and Kirk did not offer any introductions. Bogan is the host, but he doesn't introduce me to the people in the room. Anyway, it was a misstep on my part. I should have insisted on knowing everybody who was there. There were 4 others. 2 were consultants sitting next to him. The project manager for RS&H, they're the prime consultant, and then Domingo Noriega, the traffic engineer with AECOM, which is the traffic sub-consultant. So Noriega is the lead traffic engineer for the consultant side on the study. Sitting next to me was Ali Atefi, traffic engineer or transportation engineer with the Pasco MPO. And on my other side of me, it was someone from FDOT. I don't remember his name. So I thought that everybody in the room was FDOT when I gave this presentation, but that wasn't the case. Noriega just harangued me the entire time in a very combative, when did you stop beating your wife, questioning. Everything I was saying, he was incredulous. He was in disbelief. Oh, I can't believe that. That doesn't sound right. I don't think, it would be better if you did it this way or that way. This is the first time that he's seen anything about the PFI. He's telling me how it can be done differently, how it should function differently, how it won't work. He was very aggressive and defensive. And what I came to understand later, after I realized who this was, in my presentation, I was critical of the traffic memorandum that they create. It's called I think it's Traffic Technical Memorandum. It's a standard task that's done on a PD&E study. And they used Synchro to analyze the operation of their alternatives. So the 2 bridge alternatives, they use Synchro to do the analysis. That was performed by AECOM. He was the lead person. I'm critical of their analysis, not in a mean way, but I had no choice. And that's because when I did my analysis of the PFI for feasibility based on their traffic, I use VSIM because Synchro does not work with VSIM. Synchro does not work with the PFI. I have to use VSIM. And that's because Synchro doesn't understand the geometry of the PFI. So it always gives wrong results for the PFI. It's terrible. So I use VSIM. Well, in order for me to compare the PFI to the SPUI, I had to model their SPUI alternative with VSIM also, which gave me different results. And I had to explain this to them. Afterwards, I realized it was a waste of time because Kirk didn't care in the first place. He kept nodding off the whole time. He was falling asleep while this guy was harassing me. I thought they were all FDOT. I was trying to be very polite, trying to respond to his questions. I should have stopped him and said, hey, could you please wait till I'm done to ask your questions? Again, I just didn't have the presence of mind to do that. So I just suffered through the presentation with this guy. Anyway, I have a graphic that I show that provides the output from Synchro, and it shows that at the SPUI, all of these, at the SPUI signal, all the movements practically are what's called oversaturated. They're congested. What that means is that if 10 cars are trying to get through the signal in one phase and only 8 make it, 2 are behind, 2 are left behind, then it's oversaturated. And under that condition, if it's that way through the entire hour, then that means every cycle of the signal there's vehicles left behind, which makes for longer and longer queue. So I'm sure you've arrived at an intersection and traffic's backed up, and it's because only a few cars get through the light with any given green phase. Well, that's an oversaturated condition. Well, Synchro doesn't analyze it accurately. It can't do it or realistically at all. And it says so in the manual. And it says so in the FDOT Traffic Analysis Handbook. Synchro is going to give you garbage if it's oversaturated conditions. Well, this SPUI signal is severely oversaturated. Almost all the movements at the signal are oversaturated, meaning that there's a huge amount of traffic that's not getting through the signal in the hour, let alone any individual cycle. Synchro only reports the delay and queue length for the first 2 cycles of the hour. So if the signal is on a 4-minute cycle, that's 15 cycles in an hour. It's only telling you the queue length and delay for the first 2 cycles, grossly underreporting how much queue and delay is going to be experienced. I think it's terrible that Synchro does that. It shouldn't give a value at all because of what's going on, and I've seen this time and time again with the DOTs. They use that number, and the MPO. The MPO did it too. They use that number that's spit out by Synchro that is garbage, but they use that and tell the public, well, this is how much delay there's going to be. So when they build this project, it's only be a couple minutes. Okay, but that's a lie. That's a total lie. It's complete fraud. The FDOT knows it is because in their traffic analysis handbook, they say that it's not going to be correct and that they should use a program like VSIM, micro simulation, which counts every car. So it's accounting for all the traffic that wants to go through that intersection in the hour. It's all in the result. And that's what I had with my VSIM. So they're telling the public at the public meeting that the SPUI is only going to generate 3 to 5 minutes of delay. This was at their December public meeting. I run VSIM on the SPUI, and I get an hour of delay, a maximum of an hour of delay. And there is no such thing as average delay under oversaturated conditions. So they're going to show that as average delay. And they also did the same thing for the feasibility study that they just completed. Average delay. That's nonsense. That's complete nonsense. And it's lying to the public, saying, oh, this intersection is only going to have a few minutes of delay. That's what people believe when they see the numbers. Okay, but that's not what's going to happen. The delay needs to be reported as a maximum delay under oversaturated conditions. There is no mathematical average, because what the average delay shows is if you arrive at the signal at any time in the course of the hour, your average maximum delay, the average maximum delay, it would be that number, because you get through the signal. That's when the conditions are not oversaturated. That's when it's not oversaturated. It's either saturated or unsaturated, and you get through, all the vehicles get through in a phase. Well, that last vehicle that gets through, whatever that time is, maybe it's 40 seconds, then at any point in the hour, the maximum time you experience getting through that signal would be 40 seconds. That's average delay. But when it's oversaturated, every cycle of the signal, that delay increases. It may start out at a minute, but by the end of the hour, it could be 30 minutes. There's no average delay, but that's what they report to the public. They say, well, this is the average delay. It's a lie. Under oversaturated conditions, they should be reporting maximum delay and maximum queues. The maximum queues, which they don't show, they exclude that information. That tells you how far the backup is going to be. If you're a business owner, you got a driveway, and they're telling you that there's going to be a parking lot out in front of your business for an hour in the morning, or in the evening, I think you want to know. Well, they have an obligation to tell people that. No. So what they do is they lowball everything. Oh, and it's all lying by omission for the most part. Maximum delays, omit. Maximum queues, omit. That's called lying by omission. Okay, so they're showing these alternatives to the public, saying, well, this is how it's going to impact you, and they leave out everything that's going to impact them. So that's what I bring up at this presentation. Well, Bogan doesn't care. He's like, whatever, I could just see his eyes rolling practically. And the other guy is just ignoring that part of it and telling me how my PFI doesn't work because of all these things that are wrong with it. Okay. So then I show this graphic here, this bar graph, that shows the delay by movement. Okay, so there's State Route 54 westbound, eastbound, and this is by hour too. So these are approaches. So this is approach delay. 41 southbound, 41 northbound, and then for the morning and then the PM. Well, you can see that what they had at that time, I modeled it. I got almost an hour of delay, 54 eastbound. And mainly that was happening, I think, because there was blocking going on where people couldn't even get to the bridge because the ramps were backed up so far, blocking access to the bridge. Yeah, and then for the maximum amount of delay at the PFI was a minute versus an hour. And Bogan didn't care. It's like, whatever. Okay. I would think that would raise some eyebrows, that would be like, this is something we really need to take a look at. Their position could be, well, this guy, Parsons, is full of crap. He's just lying to us to try to get us to build his intersection and get his money, which I wouldn't do and would be stupid of me to even try to do. But even if they believe that, they would say, but what we should do is take a look at this and give it some honest consideration, because that is a big difference that would make for a much better project. So at least let's give it some consideration. Nah, they didn't want to do it. So it just so happens that next to me is Ali Atefi from the MPO, and he's their manager of the Vision 5456 study that's ongoing that I knew nothing about. That's a corridor study of the State Route 54 from Zephyr Hills, which is east of I-75, to Newport Richey. So it's like a 30-mile corridor, and I-75 would be on that corridor. So the agenda of the MPO board is to manipulate the NEPA process in order to game the system to get their freeway, to turn 54 into a freeway. That's the agenda. But there are rules that have to be followed, and there's a procedure. So it's all about, how can we game the system to get our desired outcome. And Secretary Gwynn and the district is all on board with that. Gwynn knows what's going on, but he's not going to rock the boat, even though he's the district secretary and he's in charge of FDOT in the Tampa area. He's a political creature and a bureaucrat. So why should he try to do the right thing? So Atefi, at the end of my meeting with Bogan, tells me as we're leaving that there's this Vision 5456 study. There's two task force. They have an East Task Force, West Task Force. So he invites me to present the PFI to these task force. Now, I didn't understand the significance of this at that time. It's like, I just thought that was a separate thing, had nothing to do with the PD&E. FDOT's doing their thing. Pasco MPO's doing their thing. Okay? They're looking at the corridor. It's got nothing to do with the intersection. The intersection's on the corridor. But a corridor study like that is going to take, if they were going to convert that road into a freeway, it's decades away. If ever. It's pie in the sky. It's one of these things where it's called, it's make-believe, it's playtime for politicians to pontificate, to make themselves noticed. Okay. But is it being realistic at all that they're going to convert this road to a freeway anytime soon? So the PD&E is an immediate concern to fix that intersection today. Turning that road into a freeway is maybe by like 2050. So that's why it didn't compute with me. But it's like, okay, fine. I mean, I want to expose the PFI, and it would be an opportunity for me to get the PFI in front of people up in the area. So fine. So I couldn't attend both because I live hours away from Tampa. So what I decided to do is produce a short video that would present the PFI to these two task force. And so it was played at these two task force. I will play it here. A bridge at the US 41 SR 54 intersection won't work, and here's why. Unlike a freeway interchange, a bridge here would only service 20% of the traffic volume. By year 2040, a whopping 50. Just pause it here real quick. This is based on their original traffic for the PD&E. So the traffic has gone through 3 iterations. FDOT did it originally, then the MPO revised it for their Vision 5456 fiasco, and then FDOT redid it again. So currently it's on its 3rd iteration. I initially responded to their first iteration, which had almost 19,000 vehicles per hour, 15,000 going through the signal, and almost 4,000 on the bridge. Okay, so that's what I say here is that only 20% of traffic will use the bridge in the future. So that's still 15,000 vehicles that have to get through the signal. That's a lot. Later, when the MPO, they redo the traffic for their Vision 5456, they reduced that by 30%. And they put more traffic on the bridge. I believe that was done deliberately to try to make the bridge look better. I asked for an explanation. They refused to give me their justification for reducing traffic by 30%. This is supposed to be a very fast-growing county, and the whole purpose of turning that road into a freeway is to accommodate all the future traffic. So you would expect that they would continue to have a large volume of traffic, but they reduce it by 30%, which also impacted my fee. It reduced my fee by 30% because by this time my fee was based on trips over 20 years, the total trips over 20 years. So I asked for, give me an explanation. Nope. Talk to the hand. So anyway, 15,000 vehicles per hour are projected to still use the signal even with the bridge. The current FDOT alternatives 3A and C use a single point urban interchange design, or SPUI, with bridge over 41. Even on opening day, the SPUI signal can be expected to be severely congested, to such a degree that during peak hours, access to the new bridge could be blocked by excessive vehicle queuing, and by year 2040, maximum delays of over an hour and maximum vehicle queues of over 4 miles could be experienced. And FDOT isn't at fault here. Given the extremely heavy traffic volumes and site constraints, the SPUI is likely the best alternative with a bridge. My name is Greg Parsons. I'm a 30-year licensed transportation engineering professional located in Jacksonville. In this brief video, I'll present a design alternative for the 41-54 intersection that can work, has no bridges or retaining walls, and costs much less using my patented parallel flow intersection, or PFI. PFI is a new, innovative, very high-capacity signalized intersection I conceived in 2004 and for which I received a U.S. patent in 2006. And this is how it works. Left turns are removed from the main intersection by turning onto a bypass road parallel and adjacent to the crossroad. It's a simple arrangement where drivers are able to turn left to go left, concurrently with crossroad through traffic. Doing so reduces the number of signal phases to 2 per cycle for much greater efficiency. What this means is the PFI produces twice as much green time at the signal than the Alt3 SPUI signal. And here's the PFI viewed from the south over 41. You're watching. So I'll interrupt it here. This is my original concept design for the PFI based on their 2040 design your traffic. So, as I said, they had almost 19,000 vehicles per hour, which meant that the PFI was going to have more lanes. So what you'll see with this design is quad turns, 4-lane bypass roads. Yeah, there were a lot of lanes. Does that mean it can't work? No. It means it needs to be evaluated carefully. That 4 lanes exist on roadways. If you go to the UK, they have roundabouts that are 4 lanes, maybe even 5 lanes. They work. I don't know how well they work, but they work. So you can't say that, well, I've got 4 lanes on my bypass roads, therefore, with turning movements, therefore that's a bad idea. That doesn't work. Without evaluating it, no. There's a quad turn here in Jacksonville, not far from where I live. I've driven through it many times. It works fine. It's on a ramp. It's a 4-lane right turn. I guess I'm bringing this up now because I took a lot of, just a lot of disbelief over, that many lanes, that's not going to work. Well, okay, evaluate it and then say it's not going to work. I mean, show me how it doesn't work. A snippet of video from a traffic microsimulation I prepared using design year 2040 AM peak hour traffic volumes from the FDOT PD&E study. Here it's running at 3 times real time. The full video running slower speed can be viewed on my YouTube channel. Just search for GF Parsons. Note the left turns are concurrent with the crossroad through movements. No congested movements, no excessive queuing, maximum delay about a minute through year 2040. Left turns are direct and intuitive, occurring just short of the main junction. Now the PFI viewed from the east over 54. Lowe's is on the left side. Traffic still flowing. Let's zoom into the main junction for a close-up. The PFI is wide, but no wider than Alt 3A. It's basically a 2-dimensional interchange, but the PFI is shorter on the approaches, resulting in fewer relocations and access impacts. Note the large islands the PFI provides at the main junction, making for safer pedestrian crossings. The islands can also... So I modeled pedestrians as well. You can see pedestrians are crossing here. This is an ongoing theme for this over the entire 7 years. The innuendo and suggestion by the FDOT and MPO officials that the PFI is not safe for pedestrians. Now, based on no engineering whatsoever, or what engineering they did do, it was wrong. Okay? It's just, well, just look at it. It looks unsafe for pedestrians. Well, in what way? In what way? I mean, you have a maximum of 4 lanes in this version of the PFI. There's 4 lanes to cross. Traffic is coming only from one direction, and there are islands for pedestrians for refuge. It's a big intersection, but it's broken up. It's almost, you could say the same thing about 2 closely spaced intersections where people have to cross, or where ramps intersect the road near an intersection. They may have to cross multiple times, in multiple stages to get across more than one road. Well, I mean, that's not really so different than this. But it's just this this bigotry. It's just uninformed bigotry that they just conclude, well, it's obviously not safe for pedestrians. I beg to differ. To be landscaped to make the intersection more attractive and visually break up the pavement. This graph shows the dramatic difference in maximum vehicle delays expected during peak periods by year 2040 between the PFI and SPUI at the signal, a minute versus an hour. This is because the PFI doesn't get congested, and less congestion means fewer crashes and cleaner air.
And over the 20-year design life of the PFI, all that delay savings really adds up. Over 14 million hours of delay, over 4 million gallons of gas, over $344 million in cost savings for the traveling public. And that's for only the 2 peak hours 5 days a week. The total savings will be much greater given that by 2030 the SPUI signal can be expected to be congested most of the day. Here's a rundown of how the SPUI alts and PFI stack up. The SPUI with severe congestion versus the PFI with no congestion. Many relocations for 3A versus the PFI's moderate number. Fewest relocations for 3C, but with an over 3,000 foot long bridge instead. The PFI can provide a safer pedestrian environment. The PFI has less visual impact with no bridge and no retaining walls, and the PFI at much lower project cost and much less construction time. The PFI is new, and new can be intimidating, but either try something new here that can work, or be reminded every day for the next 20 plus years that the SPUI can't, at a cost of $40+ million more, as you look up at what could be a mostly empty bridge because it's blocked, maybe for up to an hour while you creep in queue to get through the failed signal. So if you want to see the PFI constructed at the US 41 SR 54 intersection, contact the Florida Department of Transportation and let them know. If you want more information on the PFI or to contact me, please visit gfparsons.com or use the link address shown here to go straight to the 4154 PFI resource page. Thanks for watching.
And so, I mean, it shows now that FDOT, they actually didn't care. They don't care if people have to sit there. It doesn't mean anything to them. They're the peasants. And peasants' time is not valuable to the FDOT, the royalty at FDOT.